Ted, I definitely want to get your sense, because I was on a call earlier today with Dave Burkett, and I asked him the question, which call was worse? Was it the crazy, picking up a flag against Brandon Pettigrew and all that? Dave Burkett, I asked him what call was worse, that or the miscommunication regarding the tackle reporting eligible last year.
We actually made Jared sprint. So I would do sprint training with him once a week. I would actually do it with him. I'd run with him. So we topped off and we would hit at least 90% of his max velocity once a week. My reason for this, from a training perspective and from really pre-acclimation for the tissue, more so from a hamstring, hip flexor, quadricep, when you want to avoid some of those soft tissue injuries for a quarterback who's not hypermobile and they don't run a lot.
Welcome, everybody. My goodness, 15-2 Detroit Lions team. Everybody's excited. The bye week is now here. The Detroit Lions, the team that needed it the most, is enjoying some time off. And we got esteemed author Ted Rath, former Lion Mark Schmidt, here today to recap a wonderful Detroit Lions season, arguably one of the best seasons in franchise history. Back-to-back division titles, the number one seed, number one, tops, nobody higher than the Detroit Lions in the NFC. And everybody's excited because when you have two games at Ford Field, that just starts to really open up hope to the highest degree that this football team can make the Super Bowl and actually win it. We're going to recap a 15-2 season, look at the playoffs, look at some injuries, some players that maybe could come back for the divisional round. But let's start with Ted. Ted, your assessment of a 15-2 Detroit Lions season. Arguably, when you have an 11-game winning streak, when you have a football team that not only played well, but played offensively so dominantly, just sit back, really, and we're able to reflect on a football team that gave a lot of people a lot of great memories.
There's no question, John. And I think as you look at it, the thing that I reflect upon the most is exactly that. You said, the offensive weapons and the power that they have. This is a team that scores 40 points and makes it look easy in a routine fashion. That's unheard of in the NFL. And I know that they change the rules and they try to get scoring up. No one else is doing that. And then when you look at what Aaron Glenn has been able to do on the defensive side of the ball, with the catastrophic injuries and what they've been able to overcome, then that shifts your focus over to the talent of the coaching staff, but then the ability to build a culture. And this is not just Dan Campbell, but Brad Holmes, really Sheila at the top. And you look at everyone that's a member of that organization, being in that organization for 7 years, and then really growing up in that area as a Lions fan. I'm just happy for everyone there. And I guarantee you this, John, a 15-2 football team that's built like they are, with the offensive line, with the weapons that they have, with the ability to score points, that has home field advantage. There is not another team in the NFL that wants to go through Ford Field right now, because we talked about this throughout this show a couple weeks ago, how critically important that week one bye was, and they got it. They went out, they took care of business, they did it in dominant fashion against a really good football team in the Minnesota Vikings, and they showed that they really are the top dog, not just in the division, but in the entire conference, and I'm really excited to see what these playoffs hold.
Mark, how exciting, how much fun did you have watching this team this year?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. It was great being there on Sunday night. Really enjoyed it. I think what we all thought of at the beginning of the year, even the most optimistic Lions fans and media would have said probably, 12 or 13 wins. I don't think anybody really predicted 15. It was pretty outstanding. And don't forget, guys, they went through so much with injury and they still persevered through it. It was something that showed an awful lot of their character of getting through what they did with the injuries, especially on defense. And now they're starting to get some of those guys back, which we will talk about throughout the show. But I don't think anybody really expected that type of a season. But now the second season starts and you're in the tournament and you have home field throughout. Being there Sunday night, as you guys know, it was amazing as far as the crowd being so into it and really propelling them to that victory against, as Ted said, a really good Minnesota Vikings football team. So I think they really outdid themselves on the regular season, I really do. In any of our predictions, I don't think we had them at 15 wins. So it's real interesting to be part of this now and see how they go from here. But it's great to have that home field advantage throughout, as Kansas City has in the AFC.
Yeah, and then now after a great win, a great week, you get some awards. The NFLPA, the players vote came in, and Penei Sewell is an all-pro on offense. You see Jahmyr Gibbs after 4 touchdowns against the Vikings. He's the NFC Offensive Player of the Week. You've seen throughout the year accolades pile up for Jake Bates, Aiden Hutchinson, and, you recognize this football team was built, in a way that was built for this, that they were able to meet all these expectations that were placed on the team. The goals were to be the number 1 seed, to avenge the loss to the 49ers, to be able to withstand all these injuries. And to me, I just think that's probably one of the big reasons why they're 15-2 is the team is built and has gone through so much together. The adversity starting off, a lot of the core were part of this team 4 years ago when the team didn't win. When it was, Dan Campbell referenced it when I forgot when Jared Goff threw the ball out of bounds on 4th down in that first season in Detroit, with people going, what's going on here? And the 3-win year followed up with 1 win in the first 6 the second year. And I think everybody held steady. And to me, just to share, I was there when Sheila addressed the media. It was wild. It was 1-5. The noise started to pick up and people were talking like, hey, is this going to work? And she stood out there in front of the media, in front of me. I asked her directly. I said, hey, there's other rebuilds like the Giants. Their coaching staff got a playoff win already. And I asked her directly. I said, what gives you confidence that Dan's the right guy for the job? And she said directly, I trust the process. I trust that the people we got to do this job will do the job. And she did something that not a lot of teams do. She could have easily made the change in that second year, easily. But she stood firm in her opinion, and she stood tall in the face of the fire. And that's one of the big reasons I think this football team is 15-2. Great players and great leadership and coaching. Ted, I'm curious, what's the reason you believe this football team had a historic year this year?
Yeah, a lot of those things you said, John. It starts with leadership. I firmly believe, because I've been in buildings on both sides. I've been in buildings where you have an amazing year. I've helped take 2 teams to the Super Bowl. I mean, it takes a collective effort, and it takes a team that is gritty. It takes a team that has identity, and it takes a team that trusts each other. They connect. And like you just said, John, they've went through the fire. They have been through adversity. They have went through adverse moments. The greatest teams that I've ever been a part of, they bond through those adverse moments. They grow through them. That's the key. You have the right players. You have the right coaches, the right people in the staff, the support staff, the ownership. This is the greatest team sport on earth, and you're seeing what that meant. And I remember that moment. I remember talking to guys like Calvin Johnson, and he's telling me stories. He finally goes back and Ford Field, and they boo Sheila. And he's like, he told me flat out, he said it was uncomfortable. And now you look at what they've done because they did trust the process. When you trust the process, amazing things can be accomplished. And I think you've seen it. We're still witnessing it. I can't wait to see where they take this in the playoffs. But I think it's leadership, it's culture, all those things. And once again, all the people involved in that organization are a part of that. And it's been an amazing ride. It's been fun to watch. I'm just so happy for the people that I know directly, the Jared Goffs, the Brad Holmes, some of those people, Ben Johnson. I'm so happy for those people that I know individually and personally, because I know what type of people they are, and I know how hard they have worked for this. They deserve it.
Yeah, Mark, as a player, you understand what this football team and organization has been through, just how much they've tried to put a consistent winner out there, back-to-back division titles. How the heck have the Lions done this?
Well, I think they had to believe in the process, guys. I mean, that 2022 season, as you both alluded to, when they were 1-5, that was a trying time. I think everybody who's a Lions fan or
a person who follows them in the media, remembers that specific time, because there was starting to become some noise coming out of the fan base and as well as the media as to whether this does work or not. Like you said, John, and the ownership stayed with it and believed in it, and they finished strong in 22, had a good 23, and they put it all together. So it has been a process. It's been a long process. And as Ted mentioned, he's been through it before, what it actually takes to get to a Super Bowl or to get home field advantage throughout. And it's a lot of trying times. And they're winning those games, the close games that they were losing in 22. How many did they lose by 6 or less that year? Now they're winning those games by 6 or less. So it's shifted. They've gotten momentum. They've gotten guys to hit their strides. The offensive line has come together incredibly. Goff has played well. Gibbs and Montgomery and St. Brown and Laporta and Jamo, everything's come together there. The defensive injuries have hurt, but they got Anzalone back. I think they gave him a game ball on Sunday night, and they're going to continue to get guys back. But it's been a long process. Not as long as a lot of other cities, though. It's only been 2 years ago since that 1-5. So they've done a pretty darn good job. It's only been less than 4 years that Dan's been there, so it's pretty darn good, and it's pretty interesting to see how they'll do from here.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a collective effort, and one thing that I think that as supporters and in the media and looking at this football team, there were just so many puzzle pieces that did not intertwine with this football team. Maybe they would draft the right way, but they didn't develop, or it just you had some issues in the locker room or the quarterback play. It just, when you look at this football team, offense, defense, special teams, in combination with the draft and develop model, they picked the right people. They have the right coaches who have gotten the players to buy in, and they took that talent that they cultivated, that they believed were gritty players that could withstand the noise, to be able to then move forward and grow and develop together. And that's just unbelievable to look at when you see it now, looking back at it, that they looked at guys psychologically to say, hey, who can weather the storm? Who can handle adversity? Who can bounce back from tough times? Who can handle an NFC championship loss and want to come back even stronger, other than those that may wither away under the heat? I mean, Dan Campbell talks about it, but when you really listen to it deeply, he says he wanted players that when the pressure was the highest, their heart rate would be the slowest, meaning that they could handle the pressure. They could handle everything that was going on. And that's why, guys like Ross in the chat understand the culture is amazing. And the culture means good coaching, good development, good front office alignment. It's unbelievable to see where this football team now got to. But now it's the bye week. The football team played 3 months of football. So, Ted, I'm very curious. Dan Campbell said, and his metaphor was, he doesn't want it to shut them down. He wants the engine idling, meaning they're going to have a light workout on Thursday where they'll probably just go through some things, get out on the field, light sweat, and then 3 days off. Hearing that plan, I think a lot of the guys told me that really the plan is just lay on the couch, rest, relax, decompress, try their absolute best to get in the right mindset for the next week ahead. What's the most important key for the Lions in the bye week, and how do they go about it from a physical standpoint too?
Yeah, another good question, John. As you look at this, the physiological process your body goes through the course of a season, especially since we've added that 17 game, it's real. Your body breaks down over time. There's a cumulative effect where you have to recover continuously from these car wreck type violent collisions and everything that you go through and experience as a player in this league. It's incredible. I've had the bye a few times, and this is something that's obviously very, very important. It's a huge advantage if you handle it the right way. So what I mean by that, there's a couple different factors here. Number one, as you look at this, you have to engage the players from a physical and mental standpoint. So right now, obviously, you don't want to overstress them. The big key is not to spike them and just do unnecessary things from a physical or psychological standpoint. You need to make sure that they are primed and they are ready. That's physical, that's mental. Now, as you go into it, though, what do? We stopped calling this the bye week. I've done this a couple times where I think there's a mentality when you say bye, idle. Okay, idle's fine if you're talking about a car engine, but I don't want to slow down my system to a point where I'm like, bye, that means off. I'm traveling to Vegas and you have players that you worry. No. Hell no, not in this moment, because what we have to do is focus on the process. And the process is we've earned this right to rest our bodies, to stay active and engaged. So we spike them. We actually started to call this the bonus week. Why? We earned a bonus. We earned a bonus so that we can still practice. We can take an above the neck approach. So it could be walkthrough type reps, but at least one of those days, perhaps two, I'm going to spike the team from a physiological perspective, because you do need to practice hard to prepare your body to play a combative sport like the professional football that we see every Sunday. You have to prepare your body. So with that, you have to hit high speeds. You have to practice physical. You have to have contact. There's a balance there. You don't put them in unnecessary situations where they may be in injury-prone positions, but you do spike them and you do all these things. So with that, you also have to get the mental side. You're catching up and you're trying to figure out which opponent is most likely. So now the coaching staff has to work on a number of priorities. Hey, this team's really good in play action or whatever it is. You're assigning side projects to QC coaches, to analysts, to other people in the scouting department. You're going through these processes and you're coming up with a scouting grade and a plan against any potential opponent. Now, the beauty is they have a couple common opponents, whether it's the Vikings, the Packers, depending on how things shake out. When you deal with a common opponent, you've already played twice. That's good. That gives your coaches a little bit more ammo because you know those opponents, but you have the unknown factors of the other teams that are out there. So you're dealing with all those complexities. So as you attack it, you still have to check off those boxes. But when you do get to the point where you're closing in on that weekend, I do like the fact that Dan Campbell's going to give them a little bit of rest. I would encourage players never to travel, stay home, stay locked in. Even if they're having like some alternate, some optional stuff, I would encourage a guy like Jared, hey, have some guys over to your house. Do something that's team bonding, that's safe. You protect everybody. You guys are just watching the games. You're taking care of each other. You can talk game plan. You can talk those things. That will continue to bond that team. But once again, it's not a bye week. This is a bonus week, and they have earned that right. And it sounds like they're attacking it the right way. I love the fact that they talk about that, keep that engine idling, and then get ready to turn that thing loose next week.
Yeah, I'm curious with Mark, having played in the league, what's it like, when you look at it, what's it like playing an NFL season on your body, going through it, preparing? You understand intimately the rigors of an NFL season. What's it like to play in the league to the highest degree at the highest level?
Well, it's not easy.
And it's, now they've added another game to it, and Ted alluded to it really well. By the way, I gotta buy that Beyond Comfort from Ted. I gotta buy that book. By the way, Jeff Criswell just chimed in. He said, "Man, you guys are great. You guys know your stuff." Former All-Pro offensive lineman, but going through a year like that, it's a long, arduous, and it's tough mentally, as Ted alluded to, and it's taxing. And nowadays, it's become even more so because of the TV schedule. So that's something that has really changed things an awful lot. These Thursday nights and these Monday nights and now Saturdays and so forth. So, Aaron Rodgers alluded to that at the beginning of the season, because I think the Jets had the most difficult schedule as far as the odd games off of Sundays this past season. And he wasn't making excuses about it. He was just making reference to it. So, and a lot of it has to do with prime time and the money that they are making, and you can't deny that. But it's a long season, and the whole idea here, and the Philadelphia Eagles will attest to this, and Ted knows this, having been with them. Last year they peaked in the middle of the year, and they faltered at the end. And what happened with the Rams last year? They won 7 of 8. They peaked at the right time. The Rams are doing the same thing again this year. That's a veteran football team. Except for Nakua. And, so it's about peaking at the right time. Yes, it's a long season. Yes, it's an arduous season. And there's a lot that goes into it physically and mentally. Ted makes a good point about, team bonding and team building and all that, even through the end of the season, and doing things together. But it's about resting your body, especially at this point. And it's about peaking at the right point. And we've seen it too many times. I know it in Buffalo. People know out there, I live outside the Buffalo area, so I'm in touch with the Buffalo Bills a lot. I'm part of the NFL PA here, the Buffalo chapter, and that's a picture of that right there. So with mostly the former Buffalo Bills players and John Witkowski, who lives here in the area as well. But you don't want to peak too early. Buffalo has done that in the past. And it's a long season, and hopefully that's not the case with Detroit here. And hopefully they're not in a situation where they did real well in the middle of the year and they rattle off whatever 10 or 11 straight, and that was their high point. So because now it's a whole new season, and I was it's not going to be easy. And I was reading about the other day about how the one team that they don't want to play in the AFC, and it's not just Buffalo, but it's the Denver Broncos. Because of Peyton. So they're coming into Buffalo this weekend. That should be interesting to see how that plays out. And the Broncos came here last year and they beat Buffalo in Buffalo last year. So should be an interesting task along the way. But to answer your question, it's a long, hard season, and you just got to be peaking at the right time. And it's just as much mental as it is physical. And Ted, I'm sure, will allude to that. It really is. But I think it's more physical myself.
Yeah, and a little insight. I had a chat with Amik Robertson today earlier, and I said, hey, I mean, we're not used to seeing guys play 3 months straight without a bye week. And he said, look, Dan and the crew make training camp so tough that it kind of, he said, made the regular season easy. That's how much the grind the training camp was for this football team. Yeah, check it out. It'll be on the Lions on SI podcast. It'll come out video, audio form tomorrow. Great conversation with Amik Robertson, who had a great game against Justin Jefferson. And he shares a lot of insights regarding, look, Dan Campbell, and, harkens back to the old school days of, hey, you coach them hard and you get this football team ready to be able to handle it. And then you back off when you need to. And that's why I think the Lions were able to consistently play at such a high level throughout the year. It was just unbelievable to see the way in which this football team was able to perform. And now you look at it, one of the benefits of the bye week is that there's an opportunity for players that were injured to come back. And I think that first and foremost, Ted, I'm curious, Alex Anzalone went on a podcast with Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he said that, he had kind of like after the game, he had like not pain, but kind of like the dull sensation, like just of hurting. And he showcased what he went through having a metal rod in his left arm. He showcased the scar. And it's true. When you are willing after 6 weeks to play, he said, hey, this is dog stuff that you got to go through. From your perspective, have you, had somebody rehabbing from, a fractured arm coming back in 6 weeks and what he's going through? He said, yeah, he kind of he basically said, I'm sore. Immediately the day after was rough, but it got a little better, but it was just a little bit tough for him to be mobile a little bit after the game. But man, it's true. DAWG dog, Alex Anzalone, for trying to come back and do what he's doing.
Yeah, not even trying. He did it. And that picture, some pictures, they speak 1,000 words. That one spoke 10,000 words because unbelievable. So when I see that, it tells me how tough the player is, but I've seen so many guys do that for this team because they care, because the culture's there. Once again, you hear these same words. It's because it's all true. But what I love, I've had players experience this multiple. Actually, one when I was in LA with the Rams, it was a playoff year. Most of them were, but it was Connor Barwin, who's a local Detroit guy. Connor had very, very similar injury, put in the rod. What you worry about is the healing. You have to get the skin healing because you worry about infection and some of the things that are real that can kill you. So you get past that and you work through the progressions. You can't sweat at a certain rate. So then you're trying to establish conditioning protocols without overtaxing the player. There's all those things. But then once the healing's there, that rod is safe and protected. Now, just like anything, if you take a bad shot, that could go past breaking point and you're still dealing with some bad things. But overall, that guy did not hesitate. When you watch that game, he played a very physical game. He laid his body on the line for his brothers and for the rest of that team. It was unbelievable. So I think as you go into that, Anzalone is a tough person. He is a dog. And you look at the support that they had from that team, it was incredible. So I love that. But that's a tough injury to come through, but it just shows how tough he is and how much he cares.
Yeah. And Mark, in your playing career, what did you battle through, throughout your career to get on the field and getting in working through rehab and stuff like that? Take us through a little bit of what it's like to be out there. And because look, nobody's 100% the first day after training camp.
No, I remember my rookie year, I had what I thought was a lower hamstring pull, and it was the anterior part of my hamstring. It was a tendon down low, and man, that son of a gun would not heal, and I would ice it and stretch it and whatever. And Ted is familiar with it. It's a tendon on the outside of your knee, but it's obviously above your knee and your hamstring. And that son of a gun would not heal up no matter what I did. And then, in college, I went through this as a receiver. I was an All-American receiver. I had 2 broken fingers. I remember, which, your receiver, I broke my pinky. I broke this one here. That one. And then I had a little fracture in my right thumb. So, and just some of the nagging things. I've also played with AC joint. I had a second degree AC joint separation. I played with that. And one of the things that you'll say, even with Anzalone's thing, and this is easy for me to say from sitting in the cheap seats, okay, is that and Ted's going to allude to this. If it's not weight bearing, you got to try to go. All right. That was some of the terminology I played a long time ago. It's not on your legs. It's not on your knee or your ankle or your foot. You got to try to go. If it's in your uppers, you can try to get through it. And one of the things that, that was a good thing that he had with him as far as, the injury was that it was in his upper body. Now that's still not easy. And like Ted said, man, he laid it on the line. And sometimes I don't care who you are, you're a human being first before you're a football player. You may have some hesitation in that going out on the football field. You're not in game shape. And he went out there and he let it all hang on the line. And, it's on your mind. I don't care who you are. That's on your mind while you're playing. But you just got to focus on what you got to do. You got to kind of protect it in your own way, leading with the other shoulder. You got to be smart out there. You can't just let it all hang out. And he did that. And if I remember correctly, at the end of that game, I think they did give him the defensive game ball. They did introduce him. This was great. They did introduce him last with the defense, and he's a linebacker, so he would usually be introduced somewhere in the middle. Obviously, they do the D-line, the linebackers, and the DBs in the introduction. They left Alex to last, and the roar of the crowd, that was probably the loudest it was that night, except when maybe one of Gibbs's touchdowns. But it's an testament to him, and those guys were really glad to have him back out there, and it made a huge difference. And now we get Montgomery back, coming up, and it could be real interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the benefits. You're going to get your defensive captain back. And look, it's been showcased that when Alex Anzalone is out there, the defense just plays significantly better. They got the juice back. They only gave up 9 points to the Vikings. And you recognize, my goodness, that the impact that Anzalone has on this football team emotionally, as well as what he can do on the field. He's developed. He's also someone that got better over the last 4 years. Maybe people thought that maybe in 22 he peaked, but the coaching staff recognized that he could do more. He could develop in coverage. He could become a better tackler faster. And he got better through his time working in Aaron Glenn's system. So it was great to see him back, and now hopefully more rest and an opportunity to continue to heal will make him as close to 100% as possible for the postseason. And before we talk about David Montgomery, how the Lions, we know that they're back and they're for real. When you do shows, haters show up in the chat. That shows up when you do articles, and the Vikings fans show up and start talking. When the Packers fans start talking, the Lions are the talk of the NFL world, and it's great. It's great that people understand that the Lions are the team to beat. They sit at the mountaintop, and you got to chase the Lions. And Dan Campbell said it in 22, that last game. This football team's going to work so that all roads lead through Detroit. And that's what happens this year. And now David Montgomery is going to come back. Ted, what challenges do you think he's going to face this week? Because, he sought multiple opinions. He worked hard to battle, and he opted against the surgery to rehab. Now, football-wise, many people are wondering, like, hey, Jahmyr Gibbs is like a Ferrari. How many carries should Jahmyr get? Like, we're kind of liking the home run threat. We're liking this offense with Jahmyr Gibbs at the helm. But I think Jahmyr Gibbs can also continue to be who he is with David Montgomery as well, to get those tough yards. You saw the Lions struggle a little bit in the red zone, trying to get that football in, where David Montgomery could benefit as well. A different type of runner that can also impact the defense with how he runs. Do you see a difference in his running style coming back with what he's got going on? Or if he's out there, should we expect a similar production level? Maybe even maybe a little bit lesser of a workload. Maybe you start the game with Jahmyr and you finish the game with David Montgomery. I could see a little bit of a shift too with how they use him, short yardage. But man, what a great problem to have when you got two great running backs on this roster.
Great problem to have. And first of all, Mark's a tough dude too. Hearing that grade 2 AC joint, Mark, that's not easy. I know that did not feel good. So hats off to you, man. It's not an easy sport. But you're right, John. When you look at this, they have a great problem. We call those champagne problems. It's not a problem. You know what I mean? You got two guys that are dominant at what they do. Now, there's a couple things in play here, because when you look at the MCL, you look at the structure of the knee, how that knee forms, and then you look at positionally, what a running back has to do. The shifting, the lateral movement, the planting your foot, lower leg angles are so key. This goes all the way down to the complexities when we're teaching speed mechanics, lateral change of directions through cutting, through crossing over, some of those things. This is speed development, agility, all those things that we train the entire year for. He is a running back. That's a lateral position. So to your last point, John, I do think they're going to have to approach this a little bit differently. So when you say, hey, we still got Jahmyr, that's our breakaway back. Let him be him. Let him go. I don't think you adjust a ton. You let him be him. But am I still going to use it? Absolutely. I'm going to use Montgomery, because why wouldn't you? You got another. You might have a Ferrari over here. That's a Rolls Royce. I'm going to use that too. So let's use both of these things. So you look at it. I might look, if I'm Ben if I'm Dan Campbell and I'm thinking about, all right, how are we going to adjust maybe the game plan? You look at the linear progression, that MCL, it can get sticky, especially with what sounds like a grade 2+, because 3 out of 4 doctors recommended that he had surgery. You look at this, that's very uncommon for a player to go through a 4th opinion. Now, I'm glad he did because it's going to give him a chance. It looks like it's going to help the Lions. But when you look at this, that's very rare. So if I'm in there and I'm saying, hey, and Ben Johnson asked me, or Dan Campbell asked me, what should we do? I want this running back. I want this player in a linear fashion. Any exposure to that lateral, it's honestly unknown. Now, he's going to wear a big, bulky brace. Most likely, they'll have a tape job underneath it. Is that going to hinder him? Is it going to impact him? It's going to alter his movement mechanics a little bit. But once again, if he's running in a straight line in a linear fashion, I'm less concerned and I'm less worried outside of the normal stuff that could happen anyway. But this is a significant injury. I think, once again, he cares about the team. He's going to put himself out there. He's going to go, and I'm glad he's doing it. But, there is risk there.
Mark, I'm curious, when you get a sense to look at this Detroit Lions offense, what do you like about the running backs, and especially too, what do you like about the receivers? Because a big, now with this football team, the offense is expected to carry the load. You have great wide receivers. You have an explosive threat in Jamison Williams. You have a great run game that can dominate. This offense, I think, can carry this football team. What do you make of what you see offensively, and how do you see the discussion about the emergence of Jahmyr Gibbs? Because I'm always of the opinion you ride the hot hand. Jahmyr looks like, okay, yeah, Alvin Kamara plus. You're starting to see the explosiveness, the confidence, the strength. He bulked up. Ted can clearly attest to that as well, that Jahmyr Gibbs got stronger over the course of the last 24 months, and you can see it in his running. When he picks up the pace and he follows his block, Kevin O'Connell said post-game, because, when your defense gets torched for 4 touchdowns, you're going to get asked, like, what makes Jahmyr special? And he's like, look, just like everybody else, we try to stop him. But if he sees that small little crease, boom, he's through it. And with the speed and explosiveness that he's got, he makes this offense look really, really unstoppable. It's fun to watch from that perspective as well, seeing how fun this offense has grown this year.
Yeah, I think
John, I think it all starts with Ben Johnson and the job he's done. You're talking about somebody who, in the play calling area of the league right now, he's up there with Reed and McVay as far as the way he coordinates and the way he runs things, and how difficult it is to figure out what they are running. I mean, you can sit there, and I played the game and coached the game at Arizona, and I can't figure out what they're doing. If they're going to run it, or throw it, they disguise things really well. They motion really well. The receivers with Patrick St. Brown and with Laporta and Jamo. I mean, they got everything running on all cylinders there. But it starts with that coordinator, and it also, secondly, begins with that offensive line. And where we were sitting Sunday night, man, you could see some of the holes that were given to Gibbs on a lot of those plays, man. You're playing against, as Ted mentioned earlier, a really good football team. You're playing against a 14-2 team. And, they took over that fourth quarter and, scored 21 unanswered. And it was a largely, in my opinion, was because of the offensive line and the play calling. It was just terrific. And as far as Gibbs is concerned, and in seeing the way and analyzing the way he's played, well, he's been able to showcase his skills a little bit more without Montgomery in there. You look at it as a positive. If you're in that situation, you might say to yourself, yeah, I'll be shot at the end of the game, but it's all on me. And most players who are on that level and are at that ability level, like those two, you want the full load when you have to take it. You may not want to do it every single week, but when that opportunity presents itself, it's all on you. And guys like that want that. And Ted will allude to that. They want that position. They want the limelight, or else you wouldn't have gotten there in the first place to be there. So that's what he did, and he shined, man, especially in that fourth quarter. And offensively, they are as good as anybody right now in the league. Collinsworth alludes to it all the time. Tom Brady has alluded to it. Yes, those two guys. Who's your favorite offense right now in the league? Brady and Collinsworth will say the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, no doubt. Sonic boom for the Detroit Lions offense. And it's great to see now that you get a weapon back too in David Montgomery. All right, let's shift our attention to the postseason. AFC, NFC. Everybody's looking at it. It's the wild card round. And we'll start with Mark in the AFC, understanding that Buffalo. I think Buffalo is the team to beat. I know KC's number 1 seed, but Buffalo, when you see what they're able to accomplish, what they're able to do, I do think that Buffalo presents Kansas City the biggest challenge. You've seen the games. I think that they have now the confidence to go toe-to-toe. The X factor, the wild card, will be the Baltimore Ravens, led by Lamar Jackson, the upstart team now in Denver, making their way into the postseason. They come. You said they were able to go into Buffalo and win. You got the veteran coach in Sean Payton, but he's got a young quarterback in Bo Nix. That's always going to be intriguing to see how a young quarterback is going to handle that whirlwind. But my goodness, I like what the AFC is going to bring to the table. That the representative from the AFC is going to be very special and a tough football team. But to me, Josh Allen played at an MVP caliber level. And if he fires it up to the degree in which he can play well, I think that game potentially in the next round is going to be must watch. Buffalo against the Ravens. My goodness, you better clear your schedule and make sure you find a way to see that football game, because that could be one of the premier games that ends up happening this year. How do you see the AFC working? Tell us a little bit about Buffalo. Am I right? What do you like about the Bills, and what do you like about the AFC side of the playoff bracket?
Well, what I like about the Bills
is that they're due. Kansas City got 3 Super Bowls under your belt. I mean, and appeared in 4 of them. I mean, that's you've done it. You've been there. Of course, they want to do it again. They have home field advantage throughout. Buffalo is due. There's no question with Allen. He hasn't been to a Super Bowl, and Mahomes has gotten to 4 of them. So I think this young man is really due. This team is due. This city is due. I live in the Buffalo area, in case you guys missed at the beginning. And the thing about it is, I like Buffalo, even going against Kansas City, even in Kansas City this year. I really do. The only team that will give Buffalo a real problem are the Baltimore Ravens. And that's just the way I feel. They run the ball well. They grind clock. They match up well against Buffalo. They're peaking at the right time. And Baltimore, just like Buffalo, is due. I mean, Lamar Jackson's never been to a Super Bowl. So you have these 2 outstanding quarterbacks in Allen and Jackson who have never been, and you got Mahomes just kind of rocking it to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. Well, something's got to give and something's got to even out, in my opinion. I wouldn't want to see Buffalo have to play Baltimore. If they do, I think Baltimore gets the edge, even if it is played in Buffalo. I think that game you could play out in the parking lot, and I think Baltimore would win that football game. If Buffalo can avoid Baltimore, I think they'll be in the Super Bowl and play Detroit. There's a lot of people, of course, I'm in this market, who would say they would love to see a Baltimore or a Detroit-Buffalo Super Bowl. 2 teams that, have never won the big one before. Detroit never been there before at all. And, it'd be good for the Northeast. It'd be good for, for football and for, some of the blue collar town cities of the NFL. So that's the part I see. I see Denver being a little bit of a problem for Buffalo. I think it's going to be a close game on Sunday. As far, and you got Kansas City, you got the Chargers, who now they signed Ezekiel Elliott. That's interesting. And Pittsburgh, I don't know. They're kind of doing what Philadelphia did last year. They're not looking real strong right now. The Chargers they're difficult to figure out, in my opinion. Outstanding quarterback, just good team all the way around. Not a great team, but a good team. Now they're well coached. McConkey from Georgia has done an incredible job as a rookie. So the Chargers they're hard to figure out. But as far as this conference is concerned, I don't like Kansas City, even though with home field advantage, I don't like them to make the Super Bowl. I think it's a Baltimore-Buffalo situation as far as the Super Bowl is concerned. And the Texans are a little fickle. They're a good football team, but again, they're not a great football team. I don't give them a ton of a chance against a Buffalo or a Baltimore, and then thirdly, a Kansas City in this conference. So that's the way I assess the AFC.
No doubt. Now, Mark, you can be honest. I see a lot of Buffalo NFLPA. I live in Buffalo kind of talk. If it's the Lions in Buffalo, are we guaranteeing a Lions jersey you're wearing at the Super Bowl? Or are there going to be any bridges burned? Or we got to make sure you're still going to rock the Honolulu blue out there in New Orleans when we see you?
for sure. No.
Oh, you know what? And you go with the team who signed you. Okay, Buffalo never signed me. You know, they showed some interest in me. They worked me out, and I had gone through that. But Detroit, you know, decided to select me, and that's who you go with. That's where my blood, you know, bleeds Hawaiian blue, and that's what I like, and love that city. Love my friends out there. They're awesome. It's just it's great. It's been 30 years since I played there, and it's been awesome. And that city is very similar to Buffalo. Their fan bases are, but Detroit's probably, you know, a third the size bigger, and it shows. And the sentiment that those fans have is just incredible. You know, I was asked a question. This was interesting. This was last year during the playoffs, and they asked me, you know, how it would be. And I had been in the Buffalo area when I was in the league when they were going to 4 Super Bowls. How would it be the 2 weeks before the Super Bowl in Detroit versus how it would be in Buffalo the 2 weeks before when they're going to the Super Bowl, and make a comparison? And I said to myself, well, because I've seen the Buffalo situation in that situation years ago. And I said, you know what, man, and they said, we got to have an answer. You can't take middle of the road here. And I said, okay. I said, if there was 2 weeks before the Super Bowl in Detroit, it would outdo Buffalo. So yeah, it would. I can't even imagine what that would be like. So That would be something. I mean, you guys know. You know, Ted, you did it with Philadelphia. That the roots run real deep in that city. But Philadelphia's had success. Detroit has not had success at that level. So, you know, you'd love to see it. You want to see somebody new. I know a lot of the fans, we were just talking about the AFC. You know, people are a little tired of Kansas City. They're a great football team. I mean, pulling off, you know, the season they had this year is pretty amazing. It really is. They just know how to win. But, you know, fans want to see something different. I think the media wants to see something different. You know, it'd be great to see a Detroit Buffalo Super Bowl. But if that happens, I will be in my Detroit Lion hat like I am right now.
And now on the NFC side, you look at it, and it shapes out really well for the Detroit Lions. You look at it, home field advantage. A lot of teams have come out of the NFC that have had home field advantage. It's going to be really tough for any team to go to Ford Field and win. I really like the opportunity that Washington has to pull off the upset. But if it's all chalk, if it ends up being the Rams, I think that'll be also something that's very interesting to match out against, because they played in the playoffs last year and to start this year. It'll be interesting to see, you know, the development of the Lions defense as they prepare for the Rams. But I do think the wild card is the Commanders. I like their coaching staff. I like Jaden Daniels potentially raising his game, not getting overwhelmed by the moment. He's got great offensive weapons. I think Eckler will be a stabilizing force for that offense. And then you got McLaurin, who's a threat, always out there on the field. So that's going to be very interesting. It was interesting to hear Dan Campbell tell Kevin O'Connell, I'll see you in 2 weeks. So he's projecting potentially chalk, with one upset being the Vikings pulling off the upset against the Rams. Ted, you're familiar with the Eagles. You understand that market as well. How are you seeing this NFC side of the bracket? And, man, how good would it be to see the Lions and the Eagles in the NFC title game?
Yeah, first off, great breakdown on the AFC side, Mark. That was awesome. You look at this a couple of ways. You know, Green Bay's coming into Philly. Number one, Philly is like Detroit. You get a home field game in Philly, it's going to be tough to come in there. And you got Green Bay limping in. You have Jordan Love dealing with his thing. They just lost Christian Watson to an ACL. Every injury matters, but some matter a little bit more, and that's a big one. So you look at this, how that's going to impact Matt LaFleur's ability to call this game, how their defense is going to show up. Then on the opposite side, you got Philly. They have Jalen Hurts coming back. Their offensive line is dominant. We talk about the importance of it with the Detroit Lions. That offense is going to be able to show up. That offensive line, you got guys like Lane Johnson. You have the Landon Dickersons of the world, Jordan Mailata, all-pro. You got those guys that can dominate a game in the fourth quarter. Like Mark mentioned earlier, you get an offensive line like that, you can close out a game in a tight scenario, in a high-scoring fashion. It doesn't matter. That offensive line you can rely on. So I look at this one, you think about what those guys are doing. Then on the opposite side of the ball for Philly, you have Vic Fangio, who's dominating. You look at how he's turned that defense around in 1 year's time. I think that's going to be the difference maker. So you look at that one. LA versus Minnesota is a very interesting one to me. I know a lot of people on both teams. So a lot of that staff, obviously, Kevin O'Connell came from LA, came from Sean's system. He has the Wes Phillips, Thad Bogardus. I could name 1,000 people. Matt Daniels, their special teams coordinator. These are all LA guys. These are a lot of guys I worked with in LA with Sean. So there's a lot of familiarity there. There's a lot of that. And then you look at both sides of the ball. LA was able to rest their players, so they kind of had that situation. Now, you can never truly rest everybody. You only have 53 active. That makes it a little bit hard, but from that, that's an advantage. So you have a dominant offense. You have Matthew Stafford. You got some of the guys that are still playing great football, and they're home. So I look for that one to be a tight game. I could see it going either way. I'm actually really excited to watch that game. I think that's one that could be a really big shootout. The way the Rams defense has been playing under Chris Shula, their DC recently, they're playing really good football. They were carrying that team down the stretch in a couple games. I think this could be a really fun game. Then you look at Washington. I'm with you, John. I think Jaden Daniels is the Rookie of the Year favorite. You look at him coming to this game, it's going to hinge on him. They got to go to Tampa. They have to travel. Could be a hot game. It's not going to be overly hot, but you look at that. Could that be a factor? You start to get some cramping issues. They're coming down from Washington. They're not used to the humidity at this time of the year. So that could play a role. But I think their coaching staff is one of the best right now on the NFC side. They have great coaches. Dan Quinn has taken that over. We talk about a culture. Look at what he was able to do in just 1 year's time. I think that's a key indicator there. But then in Tampa, I think this is something to point out. Liam Cohen, if you're not talking about Ben Johnson, Liam Cohen is probably going to get a head job this year. And once again, came from Sean's tree. He's been a play caller. He left. He went to Kentucky. He developed Will Levis. Look at how Will Levis looks right now without Liam. You look at some of the things he's done with Baker Mayfield. He's got a top 3, top 4 offense in most categories. Liam can dial up an offense. Now, injury-wise, once again, this is why you mitigate as many injuries as you can. Get to a situation where you can prevent some, because they got Cade Otton, one of their second, I believe, leading receiver. Mike Evans is still going to be there, but you got Cade Otton. That's a big injury. I don't know if he's going to be able to go, what his actual status is. So you look at Tampa being able to show up. There's a lot of different variables here, but I'm excited for that game. I think that could go either way. The Minnesota-LA game, and then I see Philly probably handling Green Bay. But you look at this is going to be a fun round. This is going to be an exciting weekend.
All right. For Detroit in the divisional round, they sit back. We all get to watch. Who do you want? Last topic. Who is the favorable matchup? Who's a matchup maybe that you would enjoy kind of just seeing match wits? Clearly, I look at it like I want to play the Vikings again. I think the Lions understand the matchups to a T. Jared Goff has had success against Flores. He understands what's going on. I think that the defense has gained confidence. And I just think that Jared Goff would outperform Sam Darnold in a high pressure, high situation. Again, I think that the Lions have supreme confidence. But now, outside of that, interest level, clearly the Rams would draw some attention with Kirby Joseph and Stafford and the drama there. So that's always intriguing for the media. But just as a fan of football, I want to see Jaden Daniels show up at Ford Field. First time you got that coaching staff in Dan Quinn, who I thought was just one of the premier defensive minds in the game of football, and what he did with Dallas. He gets that job. What a great culture fit for Washington, and what he brings to the table, the credibility. You notice the way that they play. You notice that they also have some of that magic with that Hail Mary win that they had that ended up derailing the Bears season and catapulting Washington to the season that they had. And then you just see the offense that they also bring with Kingsbury, who's also going to get some attention. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that kind of young, hungry upstart team against the veteran number 1 seed. I'd love to see it, but the opportunities that present themselves for the Lions in the next round, I just think that you pretty much almost are it's going to be very tough for the team that comes to Ford Field in that divisional round. But who do you guys want to see coming up to Ford Field for the first round of the division? Who moves the needle for you? Who makes the game interesting? Mark, we'll start with you.
I think the
Rams. I think the Rams definitely do, just because they won a Super Bowl, because of Stafford and the situation there. And McVay is always interesting to listen to, whether you love him or you hate him. He's an interesting guy. He garners a lot of attention from the fans and from the media. So the Rams would be my team that I would like to see play at Ford Field. But you run into a situation with Tampa. I don't know. Tampa Bay matches up fairly well against the Lions. That's just the way I feel about it. And Baker Mayfield, I don't know. I sometimes call him the hardest working player or hardest working quarterback in football. He's doing more with less than pretty much anybody in the game at that position. That's what I think. I mean, the guy's a fighter. He's getting some of his weapons back. with Mike Evans being back in there. That's a definite gift. But nobody really expected much from Tampa this year. It's amazing that they're as far as they did. I know what Ted's thinking right now is like, well, their division sucks, but but they did actually get there, and and they deserve to be there. I don't think you want to play that football team. I just don't. I think the Rams would be a little bit more interesting. As far as Washington is concerned, coming to Ford Field, yeah, that would be interesting because Quinn is he's a genius on the defensive end of the ball. So it's a rookie quarterback who's very, very talented. But I look at it, that it could be a Minnesota or Detroit. And then I got to put Philly kind of third as far as really realistically who's going to take the conference. I gave you my top three in the AFC being Baltimore, Buffalo, and Kansas City. My top three in the NFC, and then we can ask Ted this. My top three in my NFC are Detroit, are Detroit, Philadelphia, and LA. Those are my top teams in Minnesota. I got to put Minnesota right in there with LA. The only reason I'm picking LA, guys, is because they're just a veteran team. They know how to do it. The coach has been there. I know they haven't been great this year, but they've been very, very good. And very, very good enough if you're peaking at the right time with what now he's a veteran coach. What is he, 38 years old? But he's a veteran coach. So those are my top 3 or 4 in each conference.
Ted, who do you want to see?
Mark, I love it because I agree with a lot of them. Yeah, Sean's 38. He turns 39 in about a week. So you think about that, and he's the old guy. So how crazy is that? But I would be scared to face the Rams. I really do think they match up well. But to your point, Mark, they're playing incredible football, and that defense is coming on. Chris Shula has them playing really well. Sean is going to dial up a hell of a game. That's going to come no matter what. They got Matthew Stafford. They had experience. They have some veteran players on that team that will get them ready for that game. I worry about them. I think the Minnesota, they don't really worry me. I think they would show up. Detroit would handily beat them again. I think LA would give them some problems. And then I think Philly, if I'm ranked in the top 3, I'm with you, Mark. I do think it's Detroit, Philly, LA probably at this point in the season and where they are. Minnesota, I just don't see them getting past Detroit, so I don't worry about them. And then the Jaden factor and some of the other things that we already talked about. But it's going to be interesting. I do think LA probably gives us not the worst, but a scary matchup.
Scary matchup, no doubt. But Detroit's offense, defense, I think with the week off, getting some people back really puts them in the prime advantage to finally get one of the markers that's been a stain on the organization for a long time, one of the rare teams that's never been in the Super Bowl. And I think that the 2 weeks of hype that would be bestowed on the Lions would be amazing. All the talk about Dan Campbell, the way this was built, the information, learning about Brad Holmes, that front office, Sheila, I think the national attention would be amazing. And then there's a real strong chance that the Lions are, going to go toe-to-toe with an AFC squad for it all. And I hope everybody in town gets to see it. 15-2 year, summarized by a gritty group, led by a great coach and 2 assistants that are now being sought after by a lot of teams. And it's just great because you just sit back, and you go, my goodness, other teams are looking at the Lions and going, maybe we should build like that. Mm-hmm. Alignment, cohesion, experience, leader of men. Before, it was always the Lions in the Patriot way, trying to copy others. Now the Lions figured out, hey, here's the formula. Right coach, right front office, alignment, draft and develop. You got a quarterback that's really super smart, and you build a team around the strengths of your leaders, and you build the trenches. So this has been great. It's a football team that has given everybody a lot of memories and a lot of good situations. So you can find me at Detroit Podcast on Twitter, Detroit Sports Podcast. I'm John Maakaron. Mark, what's your finishing closing thought?
Well, I just want to make a point, John, and said, this is, they're a good football team. They have a lot of, they're the blueprint maybe now to build a team from 3 wins up, and maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I think that they are. The thing that you have to be careful in this situation, I've been around this league an awful lot, and now with the Players Association
and talking to a lot of former players, this is a very good football team. You can't forget. Well, only thing I worry about, and I'll be interested to hear what Ted has to say about this. You can't fool the game.
You can't fool, no matter how tough you are, no matter how smart you think you are as a coordinator, bad decisions from the top in crucial game situations, okay? And you guys think you know what I'm talking about. You can't fool the game. Fourth down in some of these situations, you got to keep your head, okay? You can't, I still look back, and I know it's a new year and I shouldn't do this, but, they blew that San Francisco game, and I'm sorry. I love Coach Campbell, but you got to keep your wits
about you. You can't look like a, like a meathead in that situation. You got to look like a cerebral 49ers. And I know they're not on top of their game, okay, but that's what they were last year in that chess match, because that's what it becomes at a certain point, okay? And I just worry that one bad decision, and I'm not trying to be a pessimist here, okay? One bad decision,
we're going for it. And you know what? It just
flips on you. And you know what? All that work, and it's great that you're there, but you can't fool the game, guys. Okay? Duly noted. Ted?
Where can people get your book, and any closing thought?
Yeah, books on Amazon. So if you search Beyond Comfort or my name, Ted Rath, go there, tedrath.com. You can find the links at Ted Rath Strength Coach, all the social handles, YouTube channel, do some NFL stuff on that. But I agree, Mark, you made some great points. You stick to your identity. It's gotten them to 15-2. They've built this because of the process. Don't freaking think about changing the process now. It's just like in life, whatever you go through, you stick to the process. You do tough things together with your team, with your family, whoever's in your life, whether you're in football or not. That's what this Detroit Lions team is built on. That's why people love them. That's why they identify with the city of Detroit. They are built the right way. Don't change it, but also don't get scared. Don't fear failure. You attack success, and that's what they've done. That's what Jared's done, Ben's done, Dan Campbell, Brad, Sheila. That's what they've done. That's what they will continue to do. That's what they need to continue to do. Don't fear failure. You show up every single day, attack success, and trust that process that got you here.